Welcome back to Mysterious Huntsman Podcast. Yeah, it's been way too long again. I swear I've got to get this schedule down. But tonight, one of my favorite topics again, we're back to UFOs. Seems like we're always at UFOs, but this time we will hear from someone out of Huntsville, Alabama, about their experience seeing a UFO near the Huntsville Space and Rocket Center, which has a huge history, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But right now, let's welcome our guest. Hey Kaitlyn, this is Paul with the Mysterious Huntsman Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. And I heard you had an incredible story about 2 years ago down around Huntsville. So if you want to, go ahead and start with your story and we'll just take it from there.
Okay, well, it started in December of 2017. And I remember actually what made me was I was at work and then there was 3 to 5. And I didn't really think much about it because there's the arsenal, the Redstone Arsenal here, and it was just normal. But it was so bad to the point that one of my customers had even asked me, do you know what's going on? And I just was like, I work at a clothing store, so I have no idea what that is. But it made me kind of focus more on the situation about why there could be so many choppers going by. And later on that night, things had calmed down for about 3 hours, and it was probably around 10 o'clock or so, and I was just staring up at the stars, because I'm not too far away from the Space and Rocket Center, so I was looking at the Saturn V, and next to the Saturn V, I see a green just circle, like a perfect circle. It looked almost like a moon, but it was green, and it didn't have any craters, and there's a little red dot all the way to the right of it. And I guess I would assume that was the back of it, because as soon as I saw it, I said, what's that green thing in the sky? And one of my friends whipped around, and there was 2 friends in front of me that acted like they didn't hear a single word I said. My friend who turned around saw it just in time for it to zip off going to the west, and it didn't zoom out of sight. It like zoomed and then it disappeared just as fast as it appeared, like out of nowhere. And my mind was kind of blown, and my friend was just like, what was that? And my 2 friends in front of me still acted like they didn't understand what was going on. We tried asking them, and they were just like, well, we didn't see it, so it's whatever. And me and my other friend decided to do a little bit of research on it. And as my husband at the time got home, he told me that he had seen a lot more choppers. And I had looked outside, and this was only about 15 minutes later, and there was a thick fog outside. Like, you couldn't see about a foot in front of the windows or the doors. You definitely could not see the sky at that point. And so as I was telling him about this, I thought it was weird that the weather had just suddenly changed, because it was such a clear night, which is why I was looking at the stars. And so after that, I definitely needed to find out what it was. And I tried asking some of my friends that lived in the area if they happened to be outside that night and saw it too, because it was huge. You couldn't miss it, and none of them had said anything. And so that took me into my research about it.
Hey guys, I wanted to thank you for tuning in to The Mysterious Huntsman, a show where we encourage everyone to share their paranormal experiences with our online audience. And before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Premier Group LLC, and the product Hemp Paste for helping to change the lives of so many people. Now, you've no doubt heard of CBD oil. Well, CBD is just one cannabinoid out of about 118 contained within the hemp plant. Hemp Paste uses the whole plant containing all 118 cannabinoids and natural terpenes without the harmful extraction process, so you get the full benefit of the plant. Most CBD oils in the market today only contain about 2 to 3% CBD. That's it. Hemp paste contains at least 17 to almost 20% CBD, plus all of the other properties within the plant. People tell us that their PTSD, the depression, anxiety, OCD, joint pain, spasms, and many other conditions have either greatly improved or have completely gone away using hemp paste. If you would like more information on this amazing product, please email me at mysteriousHuntsman@gmail.com. You owe it to yourself to give it a try, and you'll be glad you did. By the way, hemp paste is perfectly legal and meets all local, state, and federal laws. Now, let's get back into the show.
After I saw that green thing, I tried to look up what was, what could it be, like if there was anything similar to that. And then I found actually green fireballs, which are said to be a natural phenomenon, is what Project Twinkle came down to. But what had started, I looked at the origin of green fireballs, and it started as these military people in, hold on, I'm trying to find my notes. I think it was near San Francisco around April 1950. They had started seeing these green fireballs over the Holloman Air Force. And so they asked a meteorologist to come in and research what could be causing this. And within about 6 months of research, they found that they couldn't capture it on any of their triangulation systems, their spectro cameras, or any of their Signal Corp engineering laboratory equipment. They just couldn't get a picture of it, and if they could, it wasn't all taken at the same time, so no conclusion could be made. But they just decided to stop sinking money into the program because they couldn't find out exactly what it was.
Right.
And I found this in actually CIA declassified files under Project 1947, and it goes along with other UFO researches that were done by the government. But the researcher that we had, Dr. Lalapuz, he was a meteorologist at the time. He said that they moved too horizontal to be a natural phenomenon. He said that it looked like they were controlled by something, and so nobody really agreed that it was a natural phenomenon. So that's what we just decided to mark it as off as.
Right, and they're really good at doing that, especially if you get involved in the mainstream media, or even dealing with military, or even back in that time during the 50s and on into the 60s, talking about, I know you're probably familiar with Project Blue Book. They were really big into trying to explain UFO sightings away with meteorological incidents. And it's funny you mentioned the Holloman Air Force Base, because I know back in anywhere between the 50s on up to the 70s, that whole area was marked with a lot of UFO sightings. Not only the green fireballs, but they had like actual saucer sightings. They've had triangle craft sightings, and so there's a lot going on with that area. But
yeah, and I felt like that was really important, and that's why I kept it. Especially because, like I had mentioned before, I'm also near an air base here, so that made me think, what if it happens around places with a lot of military force or weapons, or especially since we do testing here, if that could be something that causes whatever these things are to visit or happen in our airways. If it's something by the government or if it's something extraterrestrial, that's really cool that it happens specifically in places like this. But as I went more into research, I found out it doesn't happen in just the U.S. either. It has happened in Ireland and Canada. Canada, the most recent time that they have, published is in 2016. So, and it's in Calgary, Canada, which is one of their biggest cities. And if it was in the USA, it would be our 5th biggest city. So definitely around places with a lot of military and a lot of people in general.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to tell you, while you're doing research, you should look into, I think it's in Norway, but it's called the Hessdalen Lights. And for years, they've been having a lot of the odd color lights, the fireballs, for anything from blue, green, yellow, just kind of a broad spectrum of colors. but they've also been having streaks in the sky. So, and I want to say it might be somewhere around the early to mid 80s when a lot of this was going on. I think they were seeing things like 15, 20 times a week during that time. But yeah, check that out. It's in Hessdalen, Norway. It's called the Hessdalen Lights, Hessdalen, and it's pretty cool. They have a lot of videos of it, but you may see something there that kind of would spark your memory for what you saw a couple of years ago over Huntsville.
Yeah, it was. What really blew my mind was how much of a perfect circle it was, because I've seen some videos of it in other places in the U.S. I think it was near Chicago, where it flew over the city during a football stadium, a football game, and that video, it looks like a green fireball, but what I saw didn't look quite like what the video made it seem. But, I don't think regular cameras would be able to capture it, just like they can't capture the moon like the way it is as well.
Right. And you may have mentioned this, but did this seem to leave any kind of trail behind it, like a fireball, or was it just a green ball, contained within itself?
Actually, quite the opposite. The trail started in front of it, and then it followed the trail, and it zipped out of view, like it just disappeared.
Oh, that is different.
I don't know if you've ever seen Donnie Darko, but they have, I guess, their time portals coming out in front of them. It says where they're going to go, and that's kind of how that how it shot through the sky was. That little green bit went up in front of it, and then it swung into itself, almost like a rubber band being pulled and then snapped. And that's what really got me into it, was the way it moved was something like I'd never seen. It showed its future movement instead of its past movement.
Right, and that's really odd you say that. I've just recently watched the Bob Lazar video on, I think it's either Amazon Prime or Hulu or one of those, but he describes kind of, if you're not familiar with Bob Lazar, he was the guy who came forward back in the 80s who said he was tasked with reverse engineering how some of this aircraft traveled through space or through the air. And he used something called maybe like a gravity wave interrupter, to where it's almost like they pull space and time toward them rather than it actually moving. This thing is pulling toward them. And he talked about this thing after watching it kind of work down the runway. It would have a blue or greenish haze around it. And it didn't mention a trail in front of it, but it's interesting you say that the trail was actually in front of it, that it was pulling it to it. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely what made it stand out to me. And then I started asking my friends about if they've seen anything like specifically mine. But I actually heard different stories about cigar-shaped light and just bright light. Like they said, it didn't have a shape. It was just like an anomaly, I guess. And so that was something that was really weird to me, because mine had such a defined shape and then the cigar shape, I couldn't even wrap my head around how something would look like that.
Yeah, and what time of the day was this, or night?
My experience.
Yeah, I know you told me, but I forgot already. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It was around 10 o'clock. I think it was around 10 because that's around the time that my husband would get off, and then it would only take him like 15 minutes to get home. And I remember it wasn't too long after I saw it that he got home, and then I just indulged all this information to him because I was just like, I couldn't believe it, and I just had to tell somebody else besides my friend that had seen it. We were both like just talking our heads off about it. We couldn't stop because it was just so weird. Like, we had never seen anything like that, and especially with the movement. Like, we talked so in depth about it that night, we couldn't stop thinking about it because it was something we had never seen ever.
Right. And it's pretty neat that you are from that area around Huntsville, because I know you've heard the name Werner von Braun. He was the Nazi scientist that was brought over here during Operation Paperclip in the 40s to kind of help us with our space program, which I'm not sure why we would bring Nazi scientists in with us, but and trust them. But he was a big player in Huntsville, during our entire space program. He was super catalyst in propelling us into space as quickly as he did. I know you've heard of that guy, so.
Absolutely, and I knew that he was involved with Operation Paperclip, which were something to do with the rocket, the German rocket scientist as well, but I can't quite remember that much about him, but he's definitely all over the place. There's basically a monument to him everywhere around Huntsville.
Yeah, and I know that, everyone knows about his mainstream stuff that he did, but probably few know that he was kind of interested in the whole UFO mystery or the ET kind of theories of that stuff. I mean, I wonder if he knew more than he was, leading on here in the States. Because I know that back during the day, Hitler had all these guys trying to look for any way they could to win the whole war theater. I mean, he wanted to have world domination, and Hitler had his top scientists trying to find any kind of artifact they could, occult artifact, even possibly off-world extraterrestrial artifacts that would give him the edge to completely have world domination. So there's no telling what these scientists really knew what was going on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that definitely plays a big part in why he was, taking apart so many museums and just stealing art and stuff like that, because culture is power.
Right, absolutely. And I was going to say, have you ever heard of the Nazi bell? Does that ever ring a bell to not to pardon the pun, but have you ever heard of the Nazi bell?
I actually have not.
All right, that was, and I'm going to probably massacre this whole story, but that was reportedly their version of either a, anti-gravity machine, a new air war machine to use against us and the Allied troops, or it was a reverse engineered, off-world craft, that had crashed, from another planet, basically, or even interdimensional beings, whatever they are. But that's a whole theory that they reverse engineered a crashed craft, and it was called the Nazi bell, and it was shaped like a bell or an acorn. So there's a lot of scientists that have kind of came out way back when, and they kind of talked about watching this thing work and how it has no sound, or they had a major arena that would tether this thing to kind of super magnetic, super quiet, but it would also cause lots of static in the air, but it would float and can move all kinds of different ways unconventionally to any kind of aircraft that we knew. But I wonder if von Braun also had his hand in that as well.
I feel like definitely if it was around the same area and the same time, then it's more than plausible, a very high possibility. And you saying that does kind of remind me a little bit of what people say about CERN, CERN over in, I think, Sweden,
yes.
Is it? And, I think that's definitely also plausible, just because if you put your mind to anything, it can happen, good or bad. So who knows what's out there.
Right, exactly. And yeah, and that brings up another good point. They are doing some crazy things at CERN, and we don't really know what they're doing there. Actually, they talk about smashing, particles, or trying to create antimatter and all of this stuff. But if you've ever seen it, or if you haven't seen it, go look up the opening ceremony to. I guess it was an opening ceremony when they first opened up CERN, and it's a big event, and it's all over YouTube. But they had like some huge theatrical play or theatrical opening to this that was basically a satanic ritual. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen, and it was directly related to the opening of CERN. So just check that out sometime. I know you're kind of getting into researching some of this stuff, but if people don't really look deeper into things, they're going to miss a whole lot that's going on around them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just have become, they don't care so much about changes anymore. Probably about 60 years ago, just one little change would cause an outrupt in the nation, but now we just see changes. Oh, well, it's nothing. Times are changing, so let's just agree with it. And it's kind of sad because a lot of people don't understand what's going on around them. And I even actually heard I looked into a couple of links between CERN and the Hoover Dam, and there's a statue outside of CERN that's the goddess of destruction in, I think, one of the Middle Eastern religions. And so that's just, that's a big red flag to me right there. But that's something also that maybe you should look into as well, just because when I saw the link between the Hoover Dam, that was something that kind of shook me to my core. Like, I'd pause the video a couple times and just be like, oh my goodness, just because it was a lot of stuff that's been proven through time, like with the Bible or even other religions have already stated this, and now it's happening again. And so it's just a lot to look into.
Yeah, you're right, and I did not know that, so thank you for bringing it up. I will check into that. And since you brought up the Bible, I think, and I was talking with someone the other day, I think people have almost taken the supernatural element out of the Bible. They think that things that occurred back in biblical days can't or are not happening in today's age. With portals opening or seeing maybe fallen angels, I think they think that, well, that was back then. It's not going to happen now. But if you look into Revelation or throughout the Bible, through prophetic history, even closer to what Christianity calls the end times, you're going to start seeing some of this crazy stuff, and I think people are going to miss it because they're so hung up on that's happened back then. It can't happen now. So I'm glad people's eyes are opening and kind of looking into it, and I'm glad you're checking things out because, like I said, if you're not looking closely, you'll miss it all.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's actually been, the Bible itself has been calling me back to it, and especially as I get more into research, more stuff, I would rather say reveals itself to me rather than I find, because there's just, it's been said, well, even Mark Twain said, if, you're not biblical, even Mark Twain said there's nothing new under the sun, so everything's been written before, and if you can find it, then you can prevent it from happening again. You got to learn from history, is what they always say. If you don't learn from history, it's going to repeat itself. So I don't see why somebody would dismiss the stuff that has happened before, and especially if you believe in the Bible as well, then you know that anything could happen through God, and so that could mean if demons are growing or there's less Christians, then there's going to be a lot more hate in the world, and so of course more demonic things are going to be able to happen if there's less love and more hate and more envy and more jealousy. It's just even the Bible says the greatest trick the devil can pull is making people think he's not real. And if people don't believe in God, then how are you supposed to believe in the devil? And so I get personally more anxious as I see people, not believe, or people who just don't know the word anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And you made some great points with that, and yeah, I'm just afraid they're gonna we're moving so quickly into it. We're already in a super advanced technological age, but we're moving so fast that I'm afraid we're going to completely, bypass our spirituality. And I heard someone say the other day, and I don't know who said it, and I may butcher this quote, but I like it. It's like they said, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And, that speaks volumes to me that we're only here for a short time. And I think everybody's got it backwards,
Yeah, I do agree with that as well. Especially, I feel like, well, actually, I personally believe that some other force is trying to excel human evolution. Just I feel like puberty is starting earlier, and people are learning about sex and stuff like that earlier, and it does affect them. They're becoming so much older at younger ages than what they're supposed to be, and I feel like that kids are being forced to think about careers earlier and earlier, and schools are going longer and longer. Eventually, school's going to be all year long, and people are just going to take vacations. It's not going to be summer vacation anymore. It's just going to be like, well, we can take a vacation in the fall, and if it's just based around school breaks, then vacations are going to be cut shorter, and it's like an outer force is trying to create family instability as well.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
And it's just crazy to see it going on, because it really is true that like school years are really getting longer and stuff like that. And I've been saying this for a long time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And since we're all over that subject, what do you think? I mean, if there are such things as ETs or other interdimensional beings, whatever, what do you think there is? Do you think this whole UFO topic or phenomenon you think it's spiritual, or are we actually being visited from some other planet, or do you think it's demonic? And I've got a whole I could talk for hours about that, but what do you think?
Honestly, right now, I'm not really sure what I think. At first, I really just think, maybe it's just other beings like us, and we just want to know more. And, even humans want to know more. That's why we're so focused on research and trying to go to the next level, I guess, to put it in, so to speak, words. But now I'm thinking maybe they're not demons, so to speak, but what they are doing is demonic and an abomination. Just because if there are other beings, maybe we're not supposed to know about them. Just like we weren't supposed to eat the apple of Eden, or the apple in Eden, or the forbidden fruit, I guess. I just think there's some things that we're not supposed to know, and I figure maybe UFOs might be one of them. But at the same time, if these are things that can harm us, then we need to know so we can better prepare, or maybe even pray better. Just we need to know what's going on around us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what my friend and I were talking about the other day. It's just, I'm afraid we're taking the supernatural out of the Bible, and we're going to get like basically tricked into not reaching back out to prayer and safeguarding our hearts and our souls for the sake of higher technology or something. I'm afraid we're missing the boat on it if we're not careful.
Absolutely, and I feel that as well, just because of a lot of things I've seen. And I used to be all for change, all for, maybe we're changing for the better, but now as I look at it from a different point of view, and I can appreciate both sides since I've been on both sides, now that I see all these changes, I can see that, especially the family instability, it kind of breaks down the human soul. Like, we're not appreciating each other anymore, and if we just are mindless and we don't have souls anymore, then what's the point of living? I've come to the conclusion that the reason for life, the great question, why are we here? It's to live. And we're not supposed to just work and die. We're supposed to live and have memories and stuff like that. And I feel like at this point, it's kind of being robbed from us. I mean, we can change that, but at the moment, I feel like a lot of people are just giving into it. So it's not going to change.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we're just headed straight down. And I told you earlier I was in New York for the past 2 weeks working, and I saw this firsthand. Which being in Nashville, yeah, we've got a couple of million people here, but no, being in New York really opened my eyes to. I saw people, the daily grind that had been doing this for years. They walk up and down the street, their heads are down, or now they're in their phones, but their heads are down and they're just moving like ants from one place to the other, or from job to job, back home, sleep, get back on the bus or the subway, go back to work. I mean, it's just the daily grind in and out, and everyone looks defeated, or for the most part, a lot of the ones I saw, they looked defeated and just kind of beat down. Because like this is just basically an ant farm. We're just in line going to do our work and then go back home. And I'm like you. I don't think that's what we were put here for, but that's the way the world is now, and I'm afraid it's not going to get any better.
I think work can be a great thing if people were put in where they were supposed to be. Something that they liked. Because think about it like tools. I've built a dresser before. And it might have called for a Phillips head, and all I had was a regular star screwdriver or a flathead, and I haven't been able, I just figured I'm going to use the star one on the flathead, or I'm going to use my flathead on my Phillips head that I need, and eventually I break the screw or I split the wood or something because I'm using the wrong tool for the job. But if people really understood their gifts, because even the Bible says, every man on this earth has a gift, and it's one of the 7 gifts, and this is in Romans 18, I think. And even the people who don't believe, it specifically says even the people who don't believe me, we all have gifts. And if we're in the right workplaces and people were appreciated for the right things, I feel like we would do better. Just because if you're a scissors trying to do a hammer's job, you're never going to feel accomplished because you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. And vice versa. So, and that's just the simplest terms I can put it in. And
no, wow, that's a great analogy. That's very, very nice, very wise.
Absolutely, and I just feel like if a lot of us knew better about ourselves, we would be able to do more. Because I feel like too many people think, oh, well, I need to be like my dad because he was really strong, or I need to not be like my dad because I hated him. I just feel like too many people are doing things for other reasons other than themselves or a greater purpose. So, I think once we understand identity better, maybe we'll start to not want to just be little ants. But I think people will have to find their identity first. I feel like too many people don't have an identity right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You should start your own podcast. That's very good.
I've actually thought about it with some friends. So I took this opportunity. I just figured it was a great place to start.
Well, no, you're doing great, and I've just started this whole adventure myself, so I'm still learning. And I was going to also kind of segue back into, I know you mentioned earlier, and this may lead us back to what we were just talking about, but you mentioned earlier that, in addition to your UFO sighting, you had some paranormal experiences as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. I actually have 2. One I would like to talk about because it's been more recent is there's a ghost train out in Ardmore, Tennessee, which I expressed that location just because it's close to where I am. And so one day my friends had taken me up there, and they told me it was a decommissioned railroad and trains, they don't go up there anymore. And so I was like, whatever. I was kind of skeptical at first. Even though I've had my UFO experience, I was still kind of like, I'm not sure that this will happen. And they said, if you take one car, it doesn't matter how many people in one car, you'll go under 2 tunnels, you'll go under the second one, and then you'll take a U-turn and go back to the first tunnel and park before you go back through it, and that a train will come. And but you have to go around 3 a.m. And I just thought it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo like Bloody Mary or whatever. But I agreed to do it. And the first time we did it, it came right on time, like right as soon as we parked. And I was scared. I got goosebumps on my skin. But I didn't know if I still believed them yet because I just didn't know anything about the area. You know, it could have been a train that they know runs on that track. And I did a little bit more research. I couldn't find why it was there or anything, but I knew it was a one-way track. That's all I could find out about it. And it was by a catering place in Ardmore that had been shut down. And so with that information, I went back just to get a better look. And this time I took some different friends with me. But there's still the two original friends because I couldn't find my way out there yet. And we sat there, and it didn't happen immediately like it did last time. And it was like 3:50 this time. But something in me said if we waited till 4, the train would come. And I told my friends, and my friends were getting kind of freaked out because they're like, we've been here for like 30 minutes. Nothing's happened. We're in the dark, in the woods. There's no phone signal. I'm like, I just know it's going to happen. Wait. And so then when it happened, the train was going the opposite way that we had seen it the first time. So the first time it was going west, but the second time it was going east. And what I found out was it was a one-way train track. There wasn't anything that could make the trains go a separate way. But I just found that out from driving around the area trying to find where the train tracks went. And then I took my boyfriend up there a recent time. Actually, this was in May after a concert, just because we were going to Nashville and it was on the way back. And so we went up there, and this was my first time going without my two friends that had led me up there the first time. And I was going up the same way, and I saw a low clearance sign. I was like, okay, we're about to go into the first one. And then we continued going on for about another 5 minutes, and you got to go really slow because it's really hilly and stuff. And we came under a tunnel finally. And then I'm driving for another 15 minutes or so, and I'm like, what? We haven't been under the second tunnel yet. You know, I think I went the wrong way or something. I was panicked. And so I went back through, and I just decided we'll just stop at the first tunnel that we came through, and maybe it will show up. And I realized that that tunnel wasn't the normal first tunnel. It was the second tunnel, even though we had never went under the second tunnel. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit, and you can tell the separation from the tunnels because this one has a fence on the train track, so you can't get on them. But the one that has the ghost train that goes over it doesn't have a fence. You can go up there if you want. But I would never do it just because I'm scared of that train because it doesn't make any sound. You can hear the wheels very, very faintly. It looks like a normal train. The engine room, or not the engine, the control room's lights on, but it's a very pale blue. Like, none of the lights are yellow. They're all blue, very ghastly. And all you can hear is the little tires whooshing. Like, it doesn't sound like it has any weight to it or anything. And you can just faintly hear the tires before it shows up. And then it just passes by. And the first 2 times my friends went up there, they tried to throw something through it. Because they said one time they threw something through it and it just landed on the other side. But both times they reared their hand back to throw something through it. As soon as they reared their hand back, the ghost train ended. So they didn't have the chance to throw it through it. And so when I realized it was the second track and not the first one, I was like, I'm freaked out because I know that we didn't go under 2. We only went under 1. So I just started driving back out. And then came across the first tunnel. Or actually, I had thought this wasn't the second tunnel. I thought it was the first tunnel and then put a fence up like the second one. But then we finally came back to the first tunnel, and we had only gone through 1 tunnel, so we don't know how the second tunnel or the first tunnel came back. And so that was just crazy that we only went under 1, but on the way back out, we went under 2. And
Wow.
then the ghost train came almost instantly, but we turned off our car and got out, and that's when it came. But I was more freaked out that time than any of the other times just because I know I only went under 1 of the tunnels, not both of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to have you send me this location because I have to see this. I think
Absolutely, I will.
that would be pretty cool. I mean, so you actually saw this thing, right?
I've seen it 3 times now, and I've
Wow.
taken my current boyfriend up there with me 2 of those times, and he was more freaked out the latest time too because we both know that we didn't go under 2 tunnels, so that was just That's what blew my mind. And I knew that I was going the right way out because we had followed men working signs on the way in. And I thought that was weird because I'd never seen anybody on that road working or not. You know, it's just a very dead place. Like, I imagine a bunch of older people live out there, but it doesn't look like it's, like there's a lot of people there at all. So when I saw the road working signs, that kind of set me off the most recent time. And so I followed those on the way out since it was my first time going out there without navigation.
Wow.
So I know that I went the same way in and the same way out, and I only went under one tunnel the first way in, but I went under two out, and that's something I can't wrap my head around. I couldn't wrap my head around it the first time I saw it, but that was even weirder than just seeing it.
Yeah. I live below Nashville, right off 65, so I'm not far from Ardmore. I'm going to have to check it out.
It's really cool. And then my other experience, I lived in what I am sure now, since I've done all this research, was a haunted house. It was, Greenville is in Alabama, about, I think an hour and a half away from Montgomery, kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Did you say Greenville?
And, huh?
Did you say Greenville?
Yeah, Greenville. And I actually found out, because I tried to do more research on the area to see if there was any reason why this house may be spooky. In Greenville, there is also a haunted church where Confederate battlemen are supposedly seen going and fighting, but also just going to church. So I assume the whole Greenville area, because it's a very small town, was probably used for Confederate either war or training or stuff like that.
Yeah, here's what's crazy. I'm gonna blow your mind here for a second.
Okay.
I grew up in that area, and I grew up in Georgiana, which is just right below Greenville. But I know that entire area, and I know the places that you're talking about actually. So go ahead.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome. Like, you don't even know, because that house has been like one of the biggest things that have led me, you know, to my faith and to all this research, just because it was spooky. It started, I was 8 years old actually, and I have two younger brothers who are 1 year younger than me, and the other one's 4 years younger than me, and my two parents. And we had moved down there because my dad was working at a Cracker Barrel down there, which wasn't too far from the place. And he had got it from his boss, and his boss was selling it to us super cheap for rent. It was a really pretty home, had like 3 bedrooms. It had a huge deck, 2-car garage, and a huge mass of land. And it had neighbors maybe like a half mile away, except there were no neighbors that lived in the house. So, I mean, it was peace. It was, you know, a savior for a 5-person family. But yeah, and he just got it really cheap, and so that surprised me. And so I realized that weird things started to happen, especially with me getting in trouble. And I've always been a Christian, so you know, I didn't know if that was like a target. I mean, there was a time for a little while where my faith wavered a little bit, but at this house specifically, one time I got sent to my room, and books got thrown across. I was home alone with my parents because my brothers were at school. I was sick. And books got thrown across the room in the study that was 2 rooms away from me. And my parents called me in there because they thought I had did it, and I was in my room because I was in trouble. And so when I came into the book room and I saw 2 across the room, I can't remember what the books were, but I remember them being significant, like something that had spooked me. I just kept telling my parents I didn't do it because I didn't. And they said they knew it was me because they heard little footprints running back to my room. And that always scared me. And then there was another time where my dad was coming to tuck me in. And I held up my arms, you know, like a child does to get a hug or something. And then it felt like something had grabbed my wrist and held my arms up above my body. And I had hidden my leapfrog. So silly, I know. My leapfrog under my pillow, and it flung out from under the pillow. My dad saw that I was hiding it, and as soon as it flung out, my hands dropped to my chest, and I got in trouble for having my leapfrog in my room. And then my parents said shortly after that incident, I started sleepwalking, and I've never sleepwalked in any other house ever, just only that one. And they said I would get up and I would just watch them. I would watch them watch TV. I wouldn't watch their TV. I would just watch them. And to the point that they would have to coax me back to bed. And every time that I would go back to bed, I would wake up actually, and they'd be like, "We just put you to bed. Why are you back up?" I'm like, "No, you didn't. I was asleep." And it was just weird stuff like that at first. And then it went to the rest of our house. Like, it involved my mom and my brothers. There was this one day that my parents had put spaghetti out, just a box of spaghetti, uncooked out. We had just got done grocery shopping, and then out of nowhere, it disappeared. And they asked me and my brothers, because we were young, they figured we played a trick or something, and we didn't. And then they found it in the cabinet later, and it was all the way on the top shelf, so they knew it wasn't us. And the little crawl space in the attic, the wooden plaque that went over it was moved. And my parents were freaked out, and they actually called my grandmother, who is a more faithful believer than any of us, to the house and had her stay with us for a couple days because they were so freaked out. And after a while with no activity, there's this one day I went to make my younger brother something to eat, and I got choked in the kitchen. Just something had caught me by my throat just for a second, but it was really hard in just that second. And then I looked all over for the food I was trying to make him, and then something in me just knew it was under the sink, which it would have never been under the sink because it's for chemicals and stuff. And I was even 8 years old at the time, so I'm not sure why I would have thought to look under the sink. But I knew it was there, and it was weird that it was there. And then that same night, I remember because I told my parents about being choked, and they didn't believe me. Our cat, Martin, had gotten stuck in a 7-foot tree, and my dad was just too short to reach him. But the tree wasn't near the house or anything, and Martin didn't climb because he was declawed. So we had no idea how he got up there, and my dad had to get the ladder and get him down, but we still don't know how he was put up there when he doesn't have claws. And it wasn't like it was near the house, so he could have jumped off or anything. It was really weird because he was a fat old cat, and that really put us off as well. And he was just meowing and meowing. It woke us up out of sleep. It was in the middle of the night. Like, my dad was freaked out. Everybody, we were just like, how did that happen? And then right before we left, my mom said she had heard footsteps on the back porch one day, and she thought it was my dad. And so she went out there to, meet my dad and just be like, "Hey, baby, let's up from work." And then she heard voices in the back room, and she just ran out the house. And I think we were at my grandmother's that time, but she drove all the way to Huntsville from Greenville, which is like a 4-hour drive, because she was that scared. And I actually forgot a time. There was a time that my younger brother, that's a year younger than me, he was left at home alone. But we were all mature, so it wasn't really anything different. But my mom had came home and she saw smoke. And so she drove even faster home, and it turns out that the shed next door where what would have been our neighbors if somebody lived there, it had caught on fire. And it was like a half a mile from home, and my little brother didn't do it. My mom said that he was asleep when she got home, but we had no idea what just caught that shed on fire. And it was just an absolutely eerie home. Just those events alone were enough to scare us out of our boots and send us packing.
Yeah, trust me, I grew up in that area, so there's a lot that goes on still today. I mean, it's a pretty creepy place, especially at night down there. It's just really dark, remote, but it's a very interesting area for sure.
Yeah, I do have a little bit more comfort knowing that you come from there, and I'm not like alone in just a spooky place from down there. But I told so many people about that house just because, especially my declawed cat being in the tree really got me. And I actually looked more into this event as well, about ghosts that could make stuff disappear or misplace stuff. And I actually found out that some ghosts or spirits have the ability to reflect light around objects to make them seem like they're not there. But I'm pretty sure we would have felt it if it was there. So that's just something to think about how they can use their energy to move things, especially what kind of spirits and how strong they have to be to move things. Because I know that there are different levels of energy. Even if you don't believe in biblical sense and science, there's different levels of energy, and that's how we have black holes and stuff.
Right, and yeah, while you may already know this, but look into trickster, elementals, poltergeist, anything keyword like that that's got tricksters in it or elementals, and you'll see a lot of stuff like this happens around the houses.
Especially the poltergeist, I realized, because actually it comes from the German term noisy ghost, so especially sounds and moving stuff is really heavily under the poltergeist when I looked that up, and so that spooked me a little bit more. My mom, she doesn't want to hear about it anymore. Like, she'll admit that it was a spooky house to live in, and she'll tell her story if it's somebody new, but she won't. She refuses to talk about it to me and my brothers.
Yeah. Well,
but that's about all the paranormal things that have happened to me so far.
Oh, that's more than most. I mean, they're all very fascinating stories. Yeah, especially back up in Huntsville. I mean, there's, I know you've probably looked around there. There's a ton of paranormal stuff, things to go explore and investigate around Huntsville, and it's really everywhere. I've been here in Nashville probably 5 years now, and I really haven't, taken the time to get out and see a lot. But I live in a town that has tons of Civil War battlefields, the battlegrounds. There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of tours, and I haven't really been on any, but I've just been too busy. But I plan on getting out there and getting back to investigating some of these claims.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I wish you luck on your adventures, because that's just, it's really cool, and it's really awesome what you're doing.
Oh yeah, thank you. And sounds like you're jumping into the research full time with this, which that's awesome. It's a whole new world to you if you haven't been into it enough already, but it just kind of keeps pulling you in, and I don't really know where it stops. I'm still researching like crazy, and I have been since a very little kid. I was totally into the UFO stuff, and it just kind of snowballed into everything else, and then either that or I was really bored growing up in Georgiana in the 80s, so one of the two. But no, I thank you for coming on tonight, and you have my information. If anything else happens, feel free to contact me. Love to have you back on again if you have something you want to talk about, or if you just have some new research or new evidence that you maybe have uncovered about anything having to do with the paranormal or the UFOs. All
right. Thank you so much. You have a blessed night.
All right. You too. And thanks again. And like I said, you can reach me, like you have my number, but you can still reach me at mysterioushuntsman@gmail.com if you need anything. But thanks for coming on, and I will talk to you later.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
And that's it for this episode of Mysterious Huntsman. Remember, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please reach out to me at mysteriousHuntsman@gmail.com or find me on Facebook and send me a message. All right, guys, have a great Labor Day weekend, and we will be back soon.